I don't think it's a woman's place around football clubs, really. I think it's a men's domain. Women have their place watching and things like that, but I don't.
They're allowed to barrack.
But I think even the women commentators on the television and that, when they come on, they just don't seem right.
Good afternoon and welcome to Saturday Sport. Round 14 in the VFL, and our match of the day is between Sandringham and Williamstown down at Beach Road. Our special studio guest today is Port Melbourne coach Neil Ross. A couple of years ago when I did another footy program, a precursor to the footy show now that's on Channel 9, I did a late night show on Channel 2 called Late Ball, and that was pretty much chucked in the deep end, and I did it with Crackers Keenan and David Mackay and Stan Alves, and I think they copped a lot of flack for having this girlie, this broad on the programming. What would she possibly know about footy, and where does she come from, and who is she, and how can she possibly be making comments on the games and who's going to win and who's going to lose.
The first few years that I started writing footy, there was no problems, and then for about 2 years there was all these problems with being kicked out, with not being allowed in, with being treated like dirt when you got there, that sort of stuff. And then the AFL sort of came in and realised that there'd been a successful challenge to that in that the Equal Opportunity Board from a New South Wales Rugby League writer, who's actually upstairs, you should go and talk to her, Jacqueline Magnay. And when she won her case against Balmain and Alan Jones for not being allowed in the rooms, I think the AFL realised that it was important that they got their own media policy in order, and so they put out a policy demanding that clubs set aside a separate interview room so that we don't have to now go into the changing rooms, but the coach is brought out for the post-match interview, and that's made it a lot easier. The problems with women being accepted as football experts, I think, were much worse when it all began. Caroline Wilson was one of the first, and I'm sure she has far more horror stories than I do about being challenged on her right to be there and her knowledge and her role in the game. I think people like her have made it a lot easier for people like me, so I only hate to think how hard it was for Caroline when she was starting out.
And joining us in the studio at 17 minutes past 7 o'clock, 12 degrees outside, is in fact Caroline Wilson, 3AW's resident TV expert.
I mean, Linda's right. I remember the first ever football writers' dinner I was asked to, and the Football Writers Association said I couldn't go because although I was a football writer, they didn't want me to be a member because they'd never had a woman member before. There'd been people like Claudia Wright who'd gone into the dressing rooms, Corrie Perkin who'd covered it full-time at The Age for one season, but they'd never been allowed to be members. And a few people pushed and said that I should go, and I walked in and the person who was, I think it was at Princess Park, at a sort of a reception room there, the person running the show said to me, "You must be a waitress, this is where the aprons are." I mean, no kidding. I mean, people say, "Oh, come on." It's true. I mean, they thought I was a waitress. And all the speeches were gentlemen and Caroline. So, I mean, you could say it was a nightmare, but it actually taught me, it probably made me tougher, and it probably gave me a lot of confidence.